kind of come full circle after my time in the UK. I came back to Edmonton where it all started for me. And, my, I guess with the UK, I guess just getting an opportunity from a really close personal friend. We're still really good friends, Mr. Gary Duville. So I'd played junior hockey with Gary in the BC Junior Hockey League, and he was coaching in Basingstoke, and I was just finishing up with the Golden Bears, and I had no intention of ever coming to Europe to play hockey. That wasn't, I didn't think that club was in my golf bag. I was a real grinder, not much of a finesse guy. So the two cornerstones are enthusiasm and hard work. And then the bottom layer of the pyramid are all basic fundamentals, another five fundamentals you need in order to facilitate success. And then as you go up, it just kind of defines each role that you have and how you need to treat each other as humans and as friends, as comrades, as guys you're going to go to war with.
Mhm.
And when you develop that type of mentality, it makes it a lot easier to outwork other teams because they're not just doing it for themselves, they're doing it for each other.
And here we go, folks, with another series of UK hockey podcasts. And joining me today is the one and the only Stan Marple. Stan, I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to the next hour and a bit talking to you about hockey and your journey and your story and everything, because I've got such fond memories of our very brief relationship together. But thank you so much for joining me today, buddy.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. You know, spent 13 years of my life in the UK and became a British citizen while I was there and due to my grandfather being born in Derbyshire. So, lots of connections and still lots of really good friends in the UK. So, hi UK. Nice to see you again.
You're coming to us from sunny Edmonton, Alberta, where you just got off the ice right now. You're the GM of the Golden Bears. It's quite a journey for you to get to where you are today, and we'll get to it now. Normally, Stan, what I do is I break these into like 3 20-minute periods, but because I know this is a working day for you, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So we're just gonna flow with this and see how it goes. And I'm just gonna remind everybody that I met you in 1997 when you
Yeah.
became the head coach of the Guildford Flames after I think you came from Swindon up over to Guildford. And I was at this point in my life where I'd been working for Sky Sports for a year, but I really still wanted to keep one foot on the ice. I think I played about 8 games for you that year, but that was the year that you bought in some big hockey players with like Mike Harding, Scott Adair, Barkley Pierce. You had some great hockey players, and I was just just for those brief 8 games that I was in the changing room, I have some very fond memories. But 10 years in Guildford as well, and to where you are now. But Stan, where did your journey in hockey all begin?
Well, I come from a family of 10 kids. I'm the 10th child. So, of Hugh and Julie, I got six older brothers and three older sisters. So, we lived in this little 1,000 square foot bungalow in the northeast corner of Edmonton, which was a bit of a tough neighborhood. And, when I was a kid, I just wanted to get out of the house in the evening because there's so many people around. So, I'd go home, I'd have supper after school. Mom would make me do my homework, and then as soon as it was done, I was out to the outdoor rink every night. And Mom would pay $50 for a community pass, and you could just go out there every night. And there was kids from ages from 8 to 18, and they would separate the ice. You'd just throw the sticks in the middle, half on each side, and you just play the game out of love of the game. And I remember some nights, it'd be like -30 out there, and you wouldn't wear a helmet, which was cool. And you'd sweat, and then your hair would freeze, and you looked like you had this big white wig on. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. That's my early roots. That's where I learned to love the game.
When you think back to all the things that you've accomplished, and whenever you get a chance to look back and reflect of where it all started in those -30 nights and playing until the lights went off and you got probably in trouble from your folks from staying out too late. Because I remember that was what it was for me. I remember it got so cold in Saskatoon and I would stay out so late. They would turn the lights off at the rink and there'd be me and one other guy. We'd just be like playing ends, like just shooting the puck back and forth, back and forth. And it'd be so late and cold, I wouldn't want to change my skates, and I'd run home in my skates and skate for a little bit because the roads were so frozen. And then my dad would get so mad because he'd have to sharpen my skates the next day because they'd get all wrecked. But how fond is it to be able to just remember and go back to those days?
Yeah, that's kind of come full circle after my time in the UK. I came back to Edmonton where it all started for me. And, my, I guess with the UK, I guess just getting an opportunity from a really close personal friend. We're still really good friends, Mr. Gary Duville. So I'd played junior hockey with Gary in the BC Junior Hockey League, and he was coaching in Basingstoke, and I was just finishing up with the Golden Bears, and I had no intention of ever coming to Europe to play hockey. That wasn't, I didn't think that club was in my golf bag. I was a real grinder, not much of a finesse guy. So, especially seeing as, at the time, 1994 or 5, I guess there's only three imports, a 10-year British veteran and a reclassified. So if you had a British passport holder, so they just changed that rule that year, and I got lucky because we had Kevin Conway on our team, and Kevin, great international player for Great Britain, and just a Hall of Famer in the UK for sure. And um, anyway, Kevin was a 10-year veteran, so they had an extra import spot, and Gary phones me up and he says, "Marps, do you want to come play hockey in the UK?" And I was about to take a teaching job on an Indian reserve called Frog Lake, which I'm sure would have been a great life experience. But the chance to come over and play sounded a little bit better. And I just said, "Gary, I'm not that kind of guy. I don't know if I can provide what you need as an import over there." And he said, "We got enough skill. I just need a guy that's gonna play tough and move the puck and play well defensively. So and maybe fight once in a while." And I said, "Well, I can do that." So came over, and it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience, and unfortunately I hurt my knee that year, and then Peter Woods came in and he asked me to stick around and help him out during the playoffs, and I did. And yeah, then it turned into a job in Milton Keynes, and then 13 years later kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. How did you end up in Guildford?
Well, it's funny, like I knew that Guildford had a really good organization in regards to Mr. Hepburn and and what they were trying to accomplish there. And you know, I was in Swindon and we had a really good year. I think we had one of our one of our imports, Jari Virtanen, great guy. Had these two Finnish imports in Swindon, Jari Virtanen and Petri Multavera, and they were just great guys. We wrapped up the league early that year and had a team party, and I think Yari had a little bit too much to drink, fell down the stairs and twisted his ankle, so he was out for the playoffs. So I got to play in the playoffs too. Ended up playing about 40 games that year, but anyway, yeah, we won the league, we won the playoffs, and unfortunately, the team the team went into bankruptcy at the end of the season. Um, Everybody got paid and everything, and it was a great year. And so I was looking for a job, and I had applied to the job in Guildford the year before, and they hired Reg Crawford. Um, and then when I got then I interviewed for the job, and yeah, John Hepburn and I had a lengthy discussion, and he kept asking me, "Who are you going to bring in? If I give you this job, who are you going to bring in?" And I said, "Well, if you give me the job, you'll see." And I don't think he's used to being talked to like that, maybe a little bit. I wasn't disrespectful or anything, but I wasn't going to give him anything before, I knew if I had the job or not. So, yeah, he rolled the dice and gave me a chance, and it worked out good.
It did work out well for you because I know that first year you ended up winning the championship, and there was those guys that everyone those two pillars of strength, I suppose, in Harding and Adair. Like they're like the big ones, and everyone was like, "Wow, these guys are like," because they're big guys, you know. And Scott was just tough. Mike was big and strong and talented. I mean, two marquee guys that I suppose really did steer the ship for you in that first year.
Yeah, they're both doing well here in Edmonton, or Scott's in Calgary at the moment. He trades energy. He owns an energy trading company. He's a really smart fella, doing really well in life. And then so is Mike. Mike's doing great. He works for a pharmaceutical company and is doing really well here in Edmonton. But yeah, it was funny. Being that age and getting that gig so young in a way was really advantageous because there was lots of great hockey players that I played with in junior and in Edmonton with the Bears, and I was able to tap into that a bit. And you know, it's nice to talk about accolades as a coach and and being successful and having a certain amount of success. But really, in my opinion, is coaches don't win championships. Players win championships. So it's just about giving them the guidelines and uh, the recipe for success. You got to get them to buy into that recipe. But ultimately, it's down to the players. And if you can't motivate your players to do the nasty, dirty, gritty little things it takes to win, then you're not going to win, right? So, and you need goaltending. But um, on that note, I was really lucky. So, Mike Harding, good friend of mine, played junior hockey with him. He went to the States. I think he played at North Dakota. I'm not sure, but anyway, he got drafted by Hartford and had played a little bit of pro, and I knew he had a British passport because I played junior with him in St. Albert when he was a kid. I was 20, I think he was like 18, 17. And so it's just so funny. I was walking down the street in St. Albert and I run into Mike and I'm like, Mike, what are you doing next year? So I just come off contract with Hartford. I got a couple East Coast League options, maybe an AHL deal. And I said, well, would you consider coming to the UK? And he said, well, let me think about it. I says, well, let me go home and make you an offer. So went home and made him an offer and got him to come on board. And he was a huge player for us. He was really a man playing in a boys league, 6'4" guy. NHL skills, could really skate and everything. Yeah, so that was a huge pickup for us. And then yeah, Scott Adair, as you mentioned as well, tough guy out of the Western League, who I actually was his D partner for a while at the U of A, his rookie year, my last year, and yeah, it was great for him to come over, and he ended up doing a little bit of articling with Morgan Stanley a couple days a week, which was kind of part of through John Hepburn, which was kind of part of the attraction to get him to come and play. So no, those two guys were great pillars for us for that year for sure.
I'm going to go back to how you said that, the players win the championships, but I do remember being in that changing room. I also remember you putting on your equipment and your knee really, really bugging you. And the feeling, I mean, you were bone on bone, like your knees were falling apart, and you were still suiting up and getting on the ice and just grinding it out. And I think that, for that time that I was there, the players really did feel it, Stan. They felt that you were the guy that was like putting it on the line and you were leading right from the front by leading from example. And like you said, no one's going to say that you had like big, silky, soft, smooth hands or moves or anything like that, but you led with your heart. And I think that that was the real feeling of that team is that, yeah, you had some really highly skilled teams, but it was about being able to make sure that we outworked and out hustled everybody every night, and that's why you won out and won the championship. It was a really, I don't know, like I say, I was only there for a few games, but I remember being in that changing room and that energy around you leading that team. So I'm gonna pump your tires for you, okay, buddy? It was pretty cool.
Well, well, I appreciate that, Nick. I mean, I don't know if it was that important, but I think when you don't naturally have that natural ability, you got to do other things better, right? So you got to be able to find a role and provide something for the team that they don't have.
Yeah.
So maybe there's not as many guys that like, if I wish the role was scoring goals and I could have done that, but that wasn't happening. So, get down to killing some penalties, blocking some shots and sticking up for your teammates when they need you, kind of thing.
I think
So,
I scored 3 goals for you.
yes, yes, you were hot. And then you know what? I think you just signed I think what was the deal there? I think I wanted you to stay, but you had just signed a new contract with Sky and just the time commitment that you needed to be part of the team full time. It wasn't going to work. So,
I
but
wish that looking back at it and on reflecting, I do wish that I would have stayed because it was I had such a struggle with that move from playing to being on TV. Like, and it really, like, because the change room meant a lot to me, and I wasn't really vocal, but just being there, and having the stories being told. And, you had the Wiley vets and the Darren Zinger always being Mr. Grumpy and stuff. And you had like, you just had a collection of guys, Soupy, who was always showing up and grinding and working hard. And, it was something that then when I left it, I felt really empty, and as you probably know from my story, I turned to some pretty negative ways of dealing with that. And it was that transition, of moving from playing to something else. I know a lot of players do struggle with that. I'm sure we can talk about it in a little bit, but yeah, I wish that I would have stuck around a little bit longer because it was also at the time like Guildford had struggled for so long finding that right guy to lead. I was there a couple years before when Ivan Brown was there, and he really struggled as a leader and as a coach. And then I went back to the Isle of Wight while Reggie was the coach, and then I came back when you were there, and I really wanted to try to keep one skate on the ice and one in the broadcast booth, but it was just too hard. But
yeah,
yeah,
I was able to do that probably longer than I should have, but that was because I was the GM and I could always put myself in the lineup if we if we had injuries. But seriously, in the Swindon situation, it was kind of more of our budget was tapped and we were an import down and I maybe wasn't a great import, but I was able to contribute and help out in different ways. And so yeah, it kind of worked out. And I did that throughout my career. I would practice with the team a couple times a week, try to keep myself fairly fit and game ready in case I needed to be called upon. And I think my last year with Guildford, I was 39. I played 6 games. I had 2 goals in a fight. So, it was
not bad.
I think when I hung him up and told John I was leaving, I think he was a little bit relieved. Oh God, I don't have to fucking watch that anymore. Excuse me, I don't have to watch that anymore. But no, it was all good. Left on great terms with the Hepburn family, and they do a great job there. And yeah, Kirk Humphreys, who we had that year as well, he came back and helped out as a commercial manager when Soupy got hurt. Really good person. John said to me, Marp's thinking about a guy that could come in and replace the Soup, and that's always a hard job because he had big shoes to fill. But yeah, Kirk's done a great job. He's been there, um, since Soupy left, and he's been doing a great job as CFO and commercial manager of the Guildford Flames. So shout out to Humps. I'm glad you're doing well there, and I'm hoping that the team has another great season.
Yeah,
They're my second favorite team. My
I'm,
favorite team is my favorite team's obviously the Golden Bears.
uh,
Been here 20 years now as a player and manager, coach, all that stuff. And then my second favorite team's got to be the Guildford Flames, of course. And I guess my third would be the Oilers.
that's not a bad 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna say I got a soft spot for Guildford because John Hepburn backed my first ever business venture. I was like 20 something years old, and I went to him with a business plan and he backed it. That company went off to be something really, really big. And John's support to players, off the ice has been, and I know he's taken a back seat now, but I always felt it was probably the most professional run organization that
Yeah.
I'd
Oh
ever been
yeah.
part of. And it came from,
For sure. I mean, I had no, they treated me really well there. They treat their players really well there. Whatever they say they're going to do, they do, which
Mhm.
is, which you don't see every day these days, like the integrity, is paramount for me and the respect and the trust. And those are fundamental components you need to have a successful organization. And Guildford has those in spades with the job that Digger's doing, and now young Hammer's stepping up to the plate as assistant coach. I remember when he was an under 16 playing, and And Rob Hepburn has taken a lot off John's plate, his brother, and done a great job as well. So, yeah, just a great organization, and I think really gives teams like Guildford or what give the elite league that credibility, to say, hey, look, they do things right.
And I think it's like the evolution, like 10 over 10 years you played in the UK, 10 at Guildford, and I think yeah, Swindon, Basingstoke. So 13, 14 years in the UK.
Yeah, 1 year in Milton Keynes.
Yeah, 1 year in Milton Keynes, and I was a Zamboni driver in Milton Keynes when it opened up with Patty Scott and Troy Kennedy were the imports, and I was the Zamboni driver, and Mike Surratt was the coach, and I
Yeah,
got to go on the ice a few times with those guys to practice, but I never.
awesome.
Yeah, it was my introduction to UK hockey there, so it was pretty cool. But and that's the thing, that was in 1990. So I've somehow I've seen the evolution of UK hockey from the 1990 to today, 30 odd years. And you were there for like 10 years to over 14 years. And UK hockey from that time of like the three import rule to the Super League and to where it is today has taken on a lot. It's had to form its own culture, its own identity, which it has plucked from Canada, the United States, British football being its core sport. So that kind of identity, and then some European influence. So it's kind of been this patchwork quilt of people who have been able to influence it to where we are today, which I think it's on really good heading now. I know that I don't know if you know, but they're unifying the EIH and the Scottish, and they're coming under one banner, which I think is really good. Our time there has always been quite divisive and this faction against this faction and a lot of bureaucracy and stuff. So I feel like like today is a really good time for UK hockey. But in terms of your time there, what were the aspects of the culture, I suppose, that you really wanted to pull the best of your values as Stan from Alberta to, your experience growing up there in that -30 weather, everything you learned as a person, to coming to the UK, not only be able to put a winning team on the ice, but also leaving a legacy, teaching the young kids about values and about showing up and grit, determination, all the things you learned in Alberta. How did were you aware of it? Were you aware of bringing those values into your sphere of coaching in the UK?
Well, you go back to your roots, right? You always go back to your roots. So, I was very, very fortunate. I was influenced by two gentlemen at the U of A. The guy that recruited me, Claire Drake, he was just coming to the end of his tenure as a head coach. He was here for 26 years. He won 6 national championships, 18 Canada West championships as head coach. He was 1 year in '68, the year I was born. He coached the hockey team and the American football team to national championships in the same year. So these guys, they were just all about honesty, integrity, hard work, enthusiasm, all those things they brought to the table. And basically, as a young man, you're concerned about yourself, right? First and foremost. And I think that's good to a certain extent. But these gentlemen taught us how to think about the bigger picture and that being the rest of the team and, making decisions in the best interests of the team. And sometimes those decisions aren't easy decisions to take, but buying into that philosophy and knowing that if you worked hard and you earned an opportunity, you would get an opportunity. And I say, so those are kind of concepts that I tried to take with me to the UK when I coached. Um, I really like the fact that the 10 years that I was in Guildford, we we weren't in the top league. I think it's great they're in the top league now. But one of the things I really enjoyed about and in my first gigs too in Basingstoke when I stayed on as assistant coach, Milton Keynes, and Swindon. I had a lot of involvement with the junior programs. And the fact that, half of our roster at any given time or more in the British National League or if it was the English Premier League were actually British trained players. And I love that aspect of it. I loved working with the British guys. When I recruited every year, I wasn't trying to get the best imports I could right away. I wanted to use a good portion of my budget to make sure that I had British guys that were the best British guys I could get. Because that, to me, um, imports are a dime a dozen. You can go get whoever you want. And you'll get guys that's like Stan Marple come over and play for 100 pounds a week. You know what I mean? But to have a Paul Dixon on your team or a Johnny Haig or a Davy Smith, these are guys that are difference makers for you, right? Like, Ricky Plant, guys. Ricky was with me since he was 17. He played for me for about 8 years, and he just kept developing into a great player. Very coachable, good skater, good common sense, good hockey brain. Like, I'm sure, David Clark played for me for a couple years, and I tried to get David a tryout with the Edmonton Oilers, and I actually had him one when he was about 19 years old. I could have had him going to camp through Bill Moores, who at the time was assistant coach with the Oilers, but you know, situation being what it was, and David declined the offer. But that was for me what the sport was all about in the UK. And I love what the Elite League is doing. It's great hockey. It's marketable. The fans are enjoying it, but I still think that the owners got to get together and find a way to be more inclusive of domestic players in their game. They just have to. I think for the long-term viability of the sport, they got to find a way to do that. I don't have the answer for it. That's always the big conundrum, but I think that was one thing I really enjoyed about the 10 years I was in Guildford was being able to work and help develop the British players, and in the same token, bring in some great imports that were able to help me with that as well.
I think people will mark certain epochs in the UK hockey, like the 90s, three import rule. You had the Kevin Conways of the world and the Fred Perlinis. And, it's just some amazing, good leaders that with, Mike Blaisdell and these guys that have come over, NHL experience, Michael Connor and like just Rick Brabant. I could keep going and going. I'm going to stop now because I could keep going. But
Oh, sure.
just with some
Laurie
amazing,
Boschman and Dougie Smale when they went up to Fife,
yeah.
they were a handful.
There's some great import players that came over. And then you had the Super League. And that's when things ramped up with me on Sky Sports. And that's when I really saw the business side of takeover. And I saw guys like Kurt Kleinendorf and Chris McSorley and how they run their organizations. And I went, wow, they're really elevating how hockey is really from the changing room to marketing to an on ice product. So they really, I would say, using the word professionalism, but they really did give it another level of what to expect, I guess. And of course they had, super arenas, right? And then you saw I had a good friend, Andy Sparks in Guildford, and a couple of other good British guys who just were like, I can't be bothered. There's just this Super League, Nicky Iandoli, like these were guys who were really good British players. And as soon as the Super League came around, they just were like, there's no play. People quit. Good British hockey players quit to put a product on the ice that wasn't sustainable. And then you had the Elite League come in. And I think the Elite League now, over the last, 15 years of what it's been going, or maybe longer, they've been trying to find their way. But of course, you've got, four arena teams and then everybody else trying to play catch up. So there's this uneven playing field. And I agree with you until I suppose all the owners at that league can get on the same level of I don't know, profit sharing and um, linked to the GB feeder system so that they can make sure that GB stays up instead of being the yo-yo team. And I don't know what that takes either, Stan, what kind of
Yeah.
conversation, because
Uh,
I suppose while it's a business, it's to these guys, it's a business and they've got to make as much profit as they can while they can.
Yeah, and it's tough to do, now, especially with the Bosman ruling and everything else. But um, if you look at football in the UK, you know, maybe they got to take some example from one of the best run leagues in Europe, right? So if you look at the Premiership, you look at the First Division, or I guess,
Championship.
the Championship League. I mean, it's all good football. Like, and all the clubs are doing well financially. And I think part of that is the time and effort and money they put into developing their own players.
Mm.
Like, so my son Dylan plays university soccer. He's 19. He's in his third year here
Hey,
at the U of
football.
A.
Say
Yeah,
football.
football, sorry, yeah. And he's kind of like the old man. He works hard, but he's not overly talented. But he works hard. He's a good defensive player. And he was 19 and had a British passport. So I was able last Christmas to bring him over and convince Peter Varney over at Millwall to give him a tryout for their under 21 team. So he was there for a week, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. He did. I thought he did actually quite well. I thought he competed well. He didn't look out of place. Um, Obviously, those kids are really good players, and in order to keep Dylan, they would have had to give him a developmental contract and maybe let go one of the kids that they had. So that didn't happen. But we had some really positive feedback from Dylan, and once he's finished his degree here at the U of A, he'll probably go back over and give it another
Mhm.
run, maybe try to play a little Sunday league and work his way up. But when I was there, the thing that it was great. Like we stayed, everything was first class. You stay at a nice hotel, right above the training pitches in Bromley there, and then every morning 9 o'clock goes down, has breakfast with the lads. Just some calisthenics, some stretching. Um, Go over a little video on the pitch for 2.5, 3 hours, come back, have lunch, have a workout, and then your day's done. And I know it's tough with the facilities. There's a lot of challenges for hockey in the UK. But until we get into that mindset of developing our own players for our own club, and having a rule where you have to have 5 kids that you develop on your senior team. Give a 5-year period. Say, hey, you got to develop 5 kids that a quarter of your team has to be British trained that you develop. Now,
Mm.
if you want to switch that kid out with another kid that was developed someplace else, you want to do a trade, that's fine. Or you want to sell a player like they do in football and put a kid out on loan and make some money back because you're doing a good job of developing. Those are the rewards, right? So,
Mhm.
you look at Millwall in the Champions League and they're doing fairly well. Their under 21 team's doing really well, but they put a lot of work into it. They're
Yeah.
not one of the richer teams or anything like that. But you know what? They put in the effort and their coaches do a good job. And that's the key. That's the investment you're looking for. And it makes it tough because of ice time is such a commodity in the UK and you just don't have the venues that we have over here in North America. But, the space, everything else.
Yeah.
But I think if the Hockey UK can make steps into getting into that type of model, I
Mhm.
think that's the way that will make the sport even more sustainable long term in the UK. And like you said, not having that situation where you get lucky with a few passport holders that have some roots to the UK and maybe basically played like if you look at right now, you look at uh, Conway, you look at the Perlini brothers, you look at the guys that are kind of leading that team to a certain extent, and they were able to develop other places and then come back. Some of them, um, ideally, you want to have it that team itself
Mm.
would be great if 2/3 of them were just totally British trained guys, and it's getting to that point now because they're doing such a good job of competing with the imports in the elite league.
Yeah.
Just be nice if we could get more of them. I think it would be
Yeah.
better for everybody.
I think what Sheffield's set up, obviously, they've got the rink next door. They've got Ice Sheffield. They've got an amazing academy, I guess. Sheffield's probably the team that you want to watch as being able to mimic what other people do around the world in terms of having an academy. But you're right, not everybody else has those facilities. And I'm wondering, like here in the Czech Republic, my 9-year-old plays, and it is literally a factory to make hockey players for their senior men's team. It's a factory of kids, and they've got their ice time, they've got their own changing room, they've got their own stall. Parents aren't allowed in the rooms. Everything is like just so they can manufacture hockey players. My job is to make sure my boy's having fun. So I'm all constantly trying to make it a game for him and what we can do off because while they're there, it's so serious, Stan, that these 8, 9-year-old kids are literally like being groomed to feed this team. There's no imports. They're all Czech players. I think maybe the senior team has a Ukrainian and a Russian, maybe, which is a bit odd. You know how the conflict is going on. But
That's funny. I have a Ukrainian and a Russian on my team this year too.
you know, so but, hey, hockey doesn't see any outside
Yeah,
conflict,
no politics, no
no
politics.
politics in hockey. So the thing is that I think that's the thing is like, well, Czech obviously has a defined culture. Canada has a defined culture in hockey, and it still feels like the UK is trying to find its own. And I'm wondering, again, just through time and experience, I know that I've been talking with ice hockey UK people, and I know they're changing a lot. They want GB to stay in the top pool. There's a lot of really good momentum happening, but I think it's really this is the bit when we were talking on the phone. I'm really interested in the idea of hockey culture, the ideas that shape it, the coaches that influenced you, about um integrity and humility and honesty and grit and determination, those things that you learned. I'm interested, how did those coaches teach you that? Did they teach you to you like was there a lot of yelling? Was there a lot of punishment? Was it a nurturing environment? What was the kind of environment that you were like when you were younger?
Well, I guess you know, you go through hockey and you get your series of coaches, and when you're really young, it's a lot of times it's parents and volunteers and that sort of thing. But as I moved up the chain there and played 5 years of junior, and most particularly when I was with the U of A, um, Coach Drake was a real he was a real innovator. Like he helped coach the Canadian Olympic team in the 1980s. The U.S. team, that was the Miracle on Ice year.
Mhm.
We lost out in the semis that year, but there was five Golden Bear players that played on that team, and one of them was Randy Gregg, who went on to become a doctor and win five Stanley Cups with the U of A. And so and you talk about guys that influence you, and so Coach Drake influenced many generations of players. But I remember when I was a player back in the early 90s, late 80s, and it was right before playoffs. And all of a sudden, Randy had just retired from the National Hockey League. I think he ended up playing 700 games, and he ended his career with the Vancouver Canucks. But he would have the whole team over to his house for a barbecue right before the playoffs. And it was always an awesome meal. And he did it for 3 years that I was playing for the Golden Bears. And, so why did he do that? Well, one, because he's just a great person, just he's exceptional person. Um, but two, I think it coincided with those beliefs and the type of team first mentality that Coach Drake and Coach Moores really propagated while they were here. And he was in his eyes, I guess he probably looked at, hey, you know what? These guys are young guys going to school. They don't have a lot of money. We got to make sure they're well fed here before we get into the playoffs, bring the team together, do a little team building type of thing. And, you know, that always resonated with me. And I've done it since I've been home too, like to kind of carry on that little bit of a tradition. But no, it's things like that. It's people like that who make a positive impact on you. And then you want to make sure that when you're dealing with kids at any age, whether they're pros or amateurs or whatever, that you know you're being honest. You're saying what you're gonna, you do what you're gonna say, what you do, what you're gonna say. Don't tell. Sometimes the truth hurts, and you gotta say, hey, I need you to do this in order to get in the lineup. But making sure that if they do those things, then you give them the opportunity. You gotta be a man of your word. And I think that's how you build a team that wants to go to bat for each other, guys that trust each other, guys that have integrity towards each other. And one of the models that Coach Drake used, and anybody can pick this up online if you Google search it, is John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. And John Wooden was a coach for UCLA Bruins in basketball, uh, who really was maybe the godfather of starting the right culture for teams, right? And so, any coach right now, if you're looking to build a positive culture on your team, Google search John Wooden, look at the pyramid of success. The two cornerstones are enthusiasm and hard work. And then the bottom layer of the pyramid are all basic fundamentals, another five fundamentals you need in order to facilitate success. And then as you go up, it just kind of defines each role that you have and how you need to treat each other as humans and as friends, as comrades, as guys you're going to go to war with,
Mhm.
you know. And when you develop that type of mentality, you know, it makes it a lot easier to outwork other teams because they're not just doing it for themselves, they're doing it for each other. And that's the key.
The challenge that I see some head coaches have today, though, is that you have so many resources to learn how to create culture and to learn how to lead with integrity and humility. But it takes a certain, to me, what I see is it takes a certain type of head coach to be curious, to be able to open up their spectrum, their view of the tools available to them. Because a lot of head coaches, and this was one of the feelings that I had when I was in Stockholm at the Men's World Championships, is that they feel like they have to have all the answers themselves. And that if they start to look outside of the box, then their GMs are going to think that they hired the wrong guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about because he's looking at John Wooden or Phil Jackson or Scotty Bowman, or they're looking for some other inspiration somewhere. Um, you know, so there's this feeling of like I need to know it all, and I think there's a lot of pressure that comes for a head coach to come up with the answers himself. And as did you ever feel that? Or did you feel like you could always be able to ask for help? Or did you feel the pressure of like, it's all on my shoulders. I need to be the guy?
Well, you know what? I think if you're the head coach of an organization, you have to take on that responsibility. I mean, you can't slough it off. Like there, you know, especially with me being in the UK, I was head coach and GM. So, I wasn't like the head coach could say, "Oh, that GM can't get me any players." You know what I mean? I'm gonna blame him, you know. I mean, Ian Herbers tries to do that to me once in a while here at the U of A. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we get along great. But that's the thing, right? Like there's there's no finger to point except at yourself. So to a certain extent, I get it. I get the pressure involved. I was always worried thinking when I was in the UK that maybe I'm a 6 game losing streak away from going back home. And those are real things. They happen. It's a results based industry. But I think as I got more experience in coaching and as I learned each year, there's a process involved. And if you follow that process and you're doing everything you can to create an environment for success for your players, then in most instances, those players will acknowledge that and they'll want to give you bullets, right? If you're a coach that's disrespectful, if you're a coach that doesn't treat the boys with integrity, you know, um, if you're the type of coach that'll pick out a scapegoat and blame others for the misfortunes of the team, well, then that gets picked up by your players. And so you have to be a guy that's willing to take the responsibility ultimately for the success or failure of the team. That's paramount. But you have to have a process in place which will allow the guys that that if they follow it, it'll create success for them. And so, one of my rules as a coach is that we might not have the most talented team. We might not have the best goaltending. We might not have the best forwards, but collectively, if we play a certain way, if we're disciplined in our style, if we execute our systems, if we outwork our opponent and win the majority of our one-on-one battles in the corners, we move the puck quick, we stay out of the box, we play a disciplined style of game. We're not going to give them anything. The success just comes. And it sounds simple, but and you got to get the boys to buy into it. But if you do, then that's how you develop culture. That's how you develop a winning team.
So as a coach, how do you take that like you say, you're 6 losses away from maybe getting fired. So you've got the responsibility of providing for your family. So there's a lot of pressure there. Then you've got the reality that you're going to probably be involved in a coaching system that coaches juniors as well. And you're going to be in charge of some coaches that are in charge of all of that. And you've got to know that most of these players, and we can make reference to football, the football academy too in the UK, is that most of these young men will not make it to a professional stage. Um, so at what point do coaches start going, am I developing a Stanley Cup winning team here? Or am I developing a bunch of young people who are going to go out into this world and be good people? So is there like an ambiguity between trying to create like this? I need to win a championship so I can keep my job, or at least I need to win games. But also I'm in this creation system that's creating these young people that are going out into this world that might not have any aspirations of playing hockey at a professional level, but I'm still kind of in charge of all of this flow of people, and I want to make good people. So hockey culture, most guys that have played the game will say, like I say, hockey made me who I am, the grit, the determination, growing up where I grew up and being influenced with hockey in the 80s in Saskatchewan was very a typical culture of that time. Had some really good aspects to it, but also Stan, it taught me that asking for help was a weakness. It's don't let them know anybody know you're hurt because you could miss a shift. Um, Never cry, right? These are things that I taught that really did hurt me, along the way when I did need to ask for help, when I was struggling, when I was playing with broken bones, that ultimately I ended up needing surgery for because a coach said to me, "Stop your whining, Rothwell," when I was playing like double A bantam hockey. And so these are the things that I think about now in this world that we live in, and being involved in hockey the way I am is like for a coach, for a GM, for someone in charge of an organization, how do I create that elite pathway, but also know that that's going to be a small pathway when the big wide spans is going to be people who want to stay fit and healthy, want to be nurtured, want to learn about integrity, want to learn about discipline and hard work. So I suppose in your journey, where did you have to juggle them? Were you aware of it? Was it the fact that you were just a really nice guy that made you successful, or did you have to think about it?
You know what? I just think there's some golden rules in life, and one of them for me is try to treat others the way you'd like to be treated, right? So I think when you do that, everything else kind of takes care of itself. And as far as the culture part goes, I mean, all those skills that we're trying to promote and in regards to coordinated team play and in regards to putting the team first and all those things, those are just life skills. Those are just life skills. Like, if you want to be a successful at any business, you got to put in the work. Nothing's for free, man. Like, and some guys are more talented. You got some guys that, just are given more God-given gifts and some guys aren't. So it's finding that ability to get the most out of the guys that do have the talent and bringing up the talent and the hard work and the team first mentality for the guys that don't. So I don't look at it that way. I look at it. I want the guys. So for example, I've been with the Bears now for 16 years, and but since I've been with the Bears, um, I would say about 50% of our graduating players play some level of pro hockey. Okay, but there's lots of guys that don't. I'll give you an example. I had this kid Riley Keyser play for me. He won a Memorial Cup with the Edmonton Oil Kings his last year, junior. Came and played with us. He ended up winning two national championship with us. The last one he won, he was a team captain. So, Riley graduated, and I said, "Hey, Riles, like it was about Christmas time, and I don't like to talk too much about life after the Bears with the boys. I want them to focus on the task at hand." And so I went to him at Christmas and said, "Riles, listen, you're in your last year of eligibility here, and take another run at the national championship, which we won in 2018 as him as captain." And I said, "What do you want to do? You want me to start putting a video package together for your agent? You want me to start talking to some teams in Europe? I mean, I think you could have a good career." And he looked at me and he said, "Marps, this has been the best for me. I want to go out a winner and I want to get on with life. I want to get married." He was in love with his fiance at the time, and he's an environmental engineer, and he's having a great career in Edmonton. And so, the pro game's not for everybody, and that's okay. I think what it is it's just about learning that cooperation, learning about that coordinated team play, making sure that, you know, it's hard to park your ego at the door when you're a young man, right? Because everything's all about you. But the more you learn to do that early, I think the more success you have in life because you're looking at the bigger picture, and ultimately, I look at it. We're here to serve and at the same time be successful in our own right. So, yeah, it's I think that's part of the process, and whether guys go on to play pro or not, knowing that I've had a little bit of influence on them in a positive way, that's a good feeling.
Yeah, you've had a lot of positive influence on a lot of people, Stan, over the years. I know um uh you're nearing the end of your, well, you could retire soon, couldn't you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm about, I guess I'm a couple of years away from that, but yeah, who knows? We'll see. I've taken up the role of assistant coach as well this year, more due to budgetary reasons than anything else. But I got to say that I'm really enjoying it. Getting down to the getting away a bit away from still taking care of my managerial responsibilities, obviously as general manager and stuff like that. But being able to see the boys every day and challenge them to be better and try to make them better and try to help them develop those good practice habits that are going to allow them to be successful in games. For me, that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
You've seen a lot, is what I'm trying to say, in a nice way. You've seen a lot as a player, as a coach, as a GM, as a father of athletes, because as you say, your kids play football, right? And I don't know, did they ever play hockey?
You know what? I put my son Aiden in hockey, and he played for a few years. I think he played till he was 9 years old, and he's a really special kid. And what I love about him is that he has his own. He's not easily influenced, and he thinks for himself, and he has his own attitude, so to speak. So he came down the steps one day and he said, he just said to me, he said, Dad, I know hockey's your thing. It's not my thing. I, uh, I said, I don't want to play. I don't enjoy it. I said, well, that's cool. I said, I understand that. I said, but you got to play a team sport because playing a team sport teaches you so much about life. And, whether you're in a working environment or whatever, you need to be a good team player. And so he was okay with that. He said, "Yeah, Dad, I want to play soccer in the summertime like I do, and I can play indoor soccer in the winter." I said, "Sure, sounds good. That's what we'll do." And then I think his little brother Aiden was 9, Dylan was 7 at the time. I think Dylan heard this, and he runs down the stairs. He goes, "Dad, I don't want to play hockey either. I hate power skating." So you know what? It's all good. They had I put them in it. They didn't like it, and they both excelled at soccer. Both really good players. Aiden plays high level men's league here in town and going to university, and Dylan plays on the university team. So they both enjoy it. They still get out for a kick in the backyard every once in a while and do a little one-on-one with each other and help each other get better. So yeah, it's all good.
I have an intention for this episode to go out so that people can hear, your journey as a player, as a coach, as a parent, so that people can, I feel, Stan, we live in a world now that's so divisive. You're either left, you're right, you're red, you're blue, you're this, you're that, and it's so divisive. And I think that sport is such a way to unify people. And I know I see a lot of parents out there and they want the best for their kids. I see a lot of parents who also want the best for themselves through their kids. So a lot of parents driving these young kids into, like pushing them too hard, where we know that, they're called players for a reason. They need to play, they need to learn, they need to fall, they need to have fun, they need to make mistakes. And parents have a real grip of like, I know best for my kid, and they can undo what a lot of really good coaches do, or they can be part of helping what some bad coaches do. So there's this kind of thing of like, I'm hoping that people can just listen to these stories and just be curious that how can we become either better players, better coaches, or better parents just by learning more about ourselves, I guess, and through like the things that you talked about, like integrity and honesty and humility. These are core values that I know you live by, and it comes out through the way you speak and your story and how you've gotten to where you've gotten. So I just suppose over the years you've seen a lot of hockey and a lot of sport, done a lot of parenting. How have you seen things evolve? The pressures that young kids go through today that we didn't have when we were younger, the internet and mobile phones and all the stuff, all the pressures,
Well,
you know?
I don't know. I always think to myself, cream will always rise to the top, right? So as much as you want it for your child's gotta want it. Like that's got to be an intrinsic thing. Okay, so let's say you're special and you find a child that just loves the sport, is super motivated. Well, then you got to ask yourself, well, does he have the genetics? Because genetics are huge. Um, when Aiden and Dylan told me they wanted to play soccer, I was happy because I'm 5'9" and Audrey's 5'2". And they've topped out at about 5'7" and 5'8". So you know what I mean? At the end of the day, soccer was Aiden's way smarter than I am. It was an excellent choice for them. But they gotta want it. It's got to be their thing. It can't be your thing. It's got to be their thing. They got to have the genetics. And then sometimes you got to have a certain amount of God-given talent. So there's some people got two left feet, and but it's just that's kind of the process. Then if you have those three things, then you got to get a little bit lucky. Like it's funny, all the guys that you think of, all the players that get drafted into the National Hockey League that are great players that don't make it. Okay? There's one GM. You got to find your niche. There's got to be one thing you do better than anybody else. And you got to have a well-rounded game on top of it. And you got to find one GM out of those 32 that says, I'm going to give this guy an opportunity. And that's basically what it boils down to. And does that mean that the best players always get the right opportunities? No. I played with tons of guys in the UK that could have been, in my opinion, great NHL guys, but for whatever reason, maybe their lifestyle wasn't the best. Maybe they didn't get the opportunity that they should have. Maybe they just didn't have a good showing at a key time that they needed to in their career. Maybe they developed a little bit later. You know what I mean? Um, there's lots of ifs and buts and, whether you make it or not, but that shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be on becoming a little bit better every day and enjoying what you're doing in life, and so I've been very lucky. I'm passionate about the sport and I've been able to do it at a decent level my whole life, and so that's a little bit blessed because of that, but also just a lot of hard work and commitment too. So, you combine those things and good things happen.
I know you got to get back to work, so we'll start to wrap things up. I can tell. But I could keep talking to you, Stan. I'm sorry, man, but
That's okay.
I know you have to work and earn a living. So let's just wrap things up. Over your years in hockey, can you give me some of your highlights, your favorite moments? What's really like your moments of hockey and the things that you love about
Well,
it the most?
I'll tell you a funny story. When I was coaching Guilford, and I always think of this, and we were killing a penalty, and Johnny Haig and Davey Smith were on the ice because as much as they were good on the power play, they were also good penalty killers, very smart players. So I had them on the ice, and I think I had Digger on the ice and an import D or whatever, and Digger goes into the corner for the puck, and Johnny just takes off down the middle of the ice. Uh, Digger knocks it off the glass. Johnny picks up the puck at the blue line, goes in. Of course, it's a breakaway. Johnny's going to score, so he scores. Comes the bench. So he's sitting on the. I'll leave you with this note. It's pretty funny. So anyway, he's sitting on the bench and plays over, and I go, Johnny, listen, great goal. I said, good anticipation. But I said, if Digger doesn't get that puck out, it's a 5-on-3, and there's a good chance we're going to get scored on. So maybe be a little more conservative in that situation and time your skate. Wait till you know the puck's coming out. And Johnny looks at me. He goes, "Aye, Stan. If me auntie had balls, she'd be my uncle." No. And then the boys all heard this and started laughing. And I just think of those moments in the game where just those fun moments where, something said that, kind of says, yeah, that maybe I was overcoaching a little bit there, you know what I mean? But anyway, just be thankful that Johnny has the skill that he has and he finished. But I mean, at the end, and the puck got out because Digger's so determined. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, those are the little stories you have, the relationships you build with people. Um, I still get Facebook messages from guys I've coached, 20 years ago that,
Yeah.
hey, coach, how you doing? It makes it all worthwhile.
It does. Knowing you's always been great, and I'm glad that we could reconnect after all these years, and you could give me this hour of your time. I really, really appreciate it, and I know everybody in the UK, particularly Guildford, will be waiting for this to come out and to listen to it. So, Stan, I'm gonna say thank you, buddy, and you get on with your day, okay?
No problem. And just in closing, Nick, I just want to say we had our team building camping trip in the Rocky Mountains, and we did the trust thing that you sent me. Very helpful. It was a good opportunity for the guys to get to know each other better. And if you want any more information on that, you'll have to talk to Nick.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we sent some questions to Stan to help his team do some storytelling and bonding before the season. So obviously it worked out well, right?
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. A good process and stuff like that. Getting to know each other, opening up, being a little bit more vulnerable, like you say. Uh, earn the trust of your teammates. Those things go a long way.
Well, when you guys win the championship, I want something.
Well, I've had 5 years player, coach, and GM, and I need a couple more before I retire. So we'll see what happens.
Good. Make it this year, buddy. Make it one this year. All right, Stan.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to stop the recording. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll give you more information and more podcasts coming out soon, but this is the first one with Stan Marple. I hope you enjoyed it. Take it easy, folks.